What's up, guys, and welcome to another video. Today's video, I wanted to go over raiding in general in Mists of Pandaria. Okay, we've had the opportunity now to see quite a few fights. All the normal modes have been complete. All of LFR has been completed. I've dabbled in quite a few different heroic modes now, and I wanted to go over Mists of Pandaria rating in general. Okay, what are my thoughts on Mists of Pandaria rating so far? What do I think has really worked? What do I think hasn't? Favorite fights, all of which throughout Tier 14. What has been kind of the most fun things? Has it been a success? Has it been a failure? A lot of. So let's start off just rating the overall tier as a whole, and then we'll break it down a little bit further. Okay. Overall as a whole, I feel as though Mists of Pandaria has done extremely well. Rating aspect, and remember, I'm going to make a different video on, like the actual expansion, whether it be dailies, PvP, anything like that. I'm going to make different videos for that. This video is specifically about rating and everything that entails in rating. Overall, I think that the first tier of rating in Mists of Pandaria was handled beautifully by Blizzard. I really do. Here's why. Is we had three different raid instances, all gated and all put out separately. With 16 bosses, if they would have released this all in one, it would have been nothing but pandemonium, chaos, and having people literally going, oh my god. You know what I mean? Like, it just would have been too overwhelming. It would have been too much content to throw out to people all at once. It just would not have been worthwhile, in my opinion. Okay? Here's why I say this. Let's go MV. Okay? MV, the first boss in MV, Stone Guards. Amazing. Amazingly good opening fight. Not terribly difficult. Teaches you right off the bat. Do you have a good tank core? Does your tanks know their jobs? That was the biggest complaint in Kata. And in DS, remember, I was on my Blood DK for my other 10-man raid team. And as a Blood DK in Dragon Soul and the end of Firelands, I can tell you that it was extremely boring to be a tank. Okay? The reason I say that was because pretty much every fight was pull the boss to a certain spot, face him away from the raid. If you have to tank switch, this is when you tank switch. But realistically, there wasn't a whole lot. The funnest fight for a tank was honestly Ultraxian. And the reason is because you actually had to watch something and go in and out and taunt at certain times. And that was the most engaging fight as a tank. Is making sure I have my cooldown up. What am I doing here? What am I doing here? Blah, blah, blah. That was honestly the most fun as a tank that they had in all of Dragon Soul. Firelands was a little bit different because they had a couple of other cool mechanics, like say Alyss Razor was a fun tank fight. Even Balorok was a fun tank fight. But fights like Shannox, it was okay. They did have to have a little bit of communication, but for the most part, it really wasn't strong for tanks. The nice thing about Mists of Pandaria is as soon as you walked in the door of MV, your tanks were tested. Okay, I've got to watch these bars. Once these bars are full, okay, this guy's overloading. I've got to taunt this guy. I've got to have these dogs. I've got to do this. I've got this dog. You taunt this one. It engaged you as a tank. Fang had different tanking mechanics where you got an ability and you had to know how to use it. You had to channel it off somebody else. You had to put down the barrier, etc., etc. Really fun fight. Garajal, again, on heroic mode, a really good fight for tanks. Spirit Kings lacked a little bit. Elegon, pretty much a tank swap spank, and then Will, kind of the same thing, except you had the dodge mechanic, which made it a little bit more entertaining. So overall, MV for tanking was extremely good. For healers, same thing. It really taught you the difference, and I think Blizzard, what they wanted to do with healing really turned out exactly how they wanted. At the beginning of the expansion, when it first launched, you were doing everything you could to get as much spirit so that you could blanket heal, you could heal properly when the time came, you could burst heal, and then you had your maintenance phases. And I thought that pretty much every fight was roughly the same for healing, but there was actually enjoyable things in MV for tanking. As far as DPS goes, amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. You have damage buffs like Elegon. Who doesn't, as a DPS, it's still your favorite fight. I don't care who you are. Elegon, whether it be normal or heroic, is your favorite fight because of the huge damage numbers that you see. As a DPS, your favorite thing is to see just monstrous numbers. When you see 200,000 DPS, you're like, oh my god, I am so amazing. I am overpowered. This was a really good tier. I thought that MV was really, really good. There was the gear check at Garajal slightly, and then another one at Elegon definitely. Um, and then Will was kind of just an easier fight on normal mode. In heroic, it's a lot harder. But on normal mode for MV, it was just a really, really overall good opening tier. You didn't have to be extremely powerful to get through it. There was mechanics that you had to know on normal. And the biggest difference that I saw, and this is throughout the entire raid tier, guys, is in MV, in Heart of Fear, and even in Terrace, is individual accountability. If you remember, the only fight really in DS that had the individual accountability was like Major Domo, when you had to watch your own buff and make sure you didn't blow up your whole raid team. You had to know how to swap on the balls of fire so that you didn't get too high a stacks when it was hitting you with the beam. These were just little things that we had to do in Cataclysm that made raiding a little bit more entertaining and had the individual accountability. Whereas now, like fights like Elegon, where you have to watch your own stacks, fights like Garajal, where you have to have the right people down in the spirit realm, and you have to kill ads in certain orders and then get back out. Another really, really good example of individual accountability is the pheromones on Garajal. Or on Garalon. You have to make sure you're out of the cleave, that you're not standing in the poo, that you're swapping at the correct stacks. There's a lot of different things that you have to watch. Amber Shaper again. How do you use the monstrosity? Am I dropping the pools where I'm supposed to? Blah, blah, blah. And what they've done is LFR has allowed Blizzard to make normal modes more normal. And when I say that, they have upped the ante a little bit since DS. Remember that in DS and in Firelands, they had to make these bosses killable because there wasn't LFR, so they wanted people to see their content. So that's why you saw all the nerfs that happened. That's why you saw everything like that, was so that everybody could see all of Blizzard's content. And that was the biggest thing, was, you know what I mean? Like, let's see all this content. I want to make sure that we spent all this time creating it, that enough people can go through it, that makes it worth it for us financially to put this much money into raids. That's how a business thinks of things, right? Well, what LFR has done is it has allowed people who don't have all the time to raid, or people who just don't have the desire to raid as much as they need to see all this content. It allows them to see everything. They can still get their legendaries even. They can do everything that normal and heroic raiders can do and see all the same content. Obviously not all of the same, but the general idea of all of the raids. They can see all that thing. Everybody has seen Shaw of Fear. You know what I mean? At least on LFR, you've all seen it. And it's such a good tier. It allows everybody to have a chance to raid. It really does. And as a raider, and as that's what I love to do, it's really encouraging for me to see Blizzard go this route. Now, with all the bosses, did it become a bit overwhelming having 16 bosses with 3 different modes? That's 48 different fights, all in all. Zion's break, sorry. That's what it was. And it was a really, really good tier. It was a touch overwhelming when you start thinking about, well, now they released 5.1, like, you know, a couple weeks after Terrace came out. It is what it is. There were some nerfs, there was some buffs, there was whatever. It was a needed patch. They gave us another set of dailies. But for overall rating, I have to give this at least an 8. At least an 8. If a 10 is Alduar, and a 1 is Dragon Soul, because let's be honest, I think everybody kind of concurs that Dragon Soul was one of the worst raid instances ever, rivaling Trial of the Crusader. It just was. And that's my opinion. That's what a lot of people have decided. If you don't agree, please let me know what you think are the best and worst in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to read them. I love communicating with you guys via this stuff. But overall, I've got to rate the first Tier 14 of rating in Mists of Pandaria an 8. An 8 or an 8.5. Different fights, cool mechanics. You get to be in vehicles in some fights, like in vehicle I mean the monstrosity. The healing fights, like Sulong is a really good fight. You know, there's different phases. There's different things that you have to do. There's tons of individual accountability. And I thought it really made the raid tier as a whole really, really exciting. I thought that it's fresh. Um, for instance, we were doing Spirit King's Heroic the other night, and we were looking, you know, and we were progressing on that fight since they've nerfed it a little bit and made it so that the order is the same now every time you pull, which makes it a little bit more predictable so you can line up certain cooldowns, etc., etc. Um, and it was honestly, we were wiping and we were laughing. You know, we were having fun because there's so much going on in that first phase transition that, you know, if your tank, you know, has a brain fart, you're screwed. But it was just like, you know, okay, this ability, and this ability are all going to line up. Uh-oh. And it was a lot of fun. Everybody was having, I mean, yes, we were wiping, but it was good wipes. It wasn't like your Saj, when you were sitting there wiping and just going, God, I hate this. This is annoying. We pulled this X amount of times, blah, 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 blah. You know, it's the same thing over and over and over. It's it's just a lot more engaging overall, and I really think that's what Blizzard was going for, was keeping it to where you could do LFR and you can still get gear and legendaries, and it will help you. And the item upgrade is amazing because it allows you to kind of gear out older content quicker. So instead of nerfing it, you can upgrade your items, and over the course of a couple weeks, well, now fights that you couldn't do before, you can do because you have 15 extra item levels. From doing dailies. Like, I've seen a guy who only had 4 bosses down total in normal mode, but he had all epics through reputation, through LFR, through everything else. And so he was still able to come in and compete on raid teams who were clearing all of normal content. Yes, he wasn't quite as good because he didn't have things like tier bonuses or the best trinkets or things like that or weapons, but he still had enough gear to where he was competitive, and if he knew the fights and knew the mechanics, he could jump right in, and it was like he never missed anything. And I think that's what Blizzard is going for, is they don't want people to fall so far behind to where they feel discouraged with all the content that's out there. And if you didn't look this morning, MMO Champion put up a thing that the Thunder King is 5.2. The Return of the Thunder King. Go look at MMO Champion's website, but it looks like just a monster castle. It's got that ICC Ulduar feel just from the first picture of a look at it. I'm curious to see how many bosses they end up having in there, what the encounters look like. I can't wait for it, and I really think that Blizzard is learning from Cataclysm, and they're saying this is what we needed to fix, and they're doing it. They are absolutely delivering. Now, depending on how this raid content turns out in 5.2, we'll see. But it looks very promising right now. I haven't been this excited to raid an upcoming tier patch since we did ICC. You know what I mean? I mean, think about Wrath of the Lich King, probably the most popular expansion ever. We started off in the new Nax, right? And for anybody who had been playing a while, they were like, Nax, and we all get to go in. Yes. And it was fun, and it was a good encounter. It wasn't extremely difficult. It was a good opening tier. And then where'd we go? To Ulduar, which is, by most people's opinion, the best raid instance ever made. The way that hard modes worked, with the amount of bosses, the sheer size of the place, it was a real accomplishment when you got Yogg down. It was just such, like, you just felt like you had accomplished something in game. It was a good tier. And then you went to what? Then you went to TOC. We're not going to talk about that. We'll pretend that didn't happen. And then you had ICC, the Lich King, which with one of the best fights ever made, with the Lich King fight. Talk about individual accountability. You had the debuff that you had to swap between the ads. You had Defile. You had the ads, that the Valkyrie that came and picked you up. And then you had the RP at the end. And it was just so good. Just as an expansion, just so good. And I think they were riding so high, and then Cataclysm came out, and they started out okay. You know, Bastion of Twilight, all the rest of them, you know, were okay. Firelands was actually pretty good. I really enjoyed Firelands. Dragon Soul was a big shit. In my opinion, it just wasn't good at all. There was just, they all looked the same. It felt like Blizzard was working on something else, and they didn't care at the time about WoW. It's just really how I felt and how a lot of raiders felt, and then the amount of time that we had to sit in there. It burned a lot of players out. A lot of players stopped playing because of that. And I really encourage you guys, if you have stopped playing WoW or, you know, whatever the circumstance may be, now is the time to get back in. Now is the time to get back in, because if you're a raider and you love raiding and you haven't seen some of this content, come on in, because there's people pugging it all the time. There's good raid guilds out there that are recruiting for just, you know, normal modes, even if it's one night, 2 nights a week, just to see the normal content. You can get through it. You can do it, and they're really cool fights. You're going to really enjoy them. I promise you. I have never had more fun playing a raid tier than I have had so far, besides, like I said, Alduar or ICC were my 2 favorites. And I really think that you're going to love Tier 14. Tier 14 was great. Heart of Fear. Let's talk about that for a minute. Heart of Fear, of the 3 raid instances that they released in Tier 14, the first tier of Mists of Pandaria, I feel that Heart of Fear, if I had to rank Heart of Fear... Well, first off, let's say MV. I wanted to let you know my rank on that is a 8. Okay? Heart of Fear is a little bit less for me. I believe it's about a 7. The only reason I say that is there are some fights in there. Most everything looks the same. I'm not a big fan of the bug idea. I get the lore and everything behind it, but I just didn't... I don't know. It didn't really do anything for me. I could be wrong, but I would give it like a 6.5 to a 7. I thought there was some cool mechanics in there. I did feel that some of the bosses were very, very well done. However, I felt like Blade Lord was a bit crappy. Imperial Vizier Zorlok, he's a raid boss that tries to kill you but gives you shields so he doesn't kill you. You know, just some of the mechanics in there really bugged me a little bit. The Grand Empress at the end, I've got these ads, I got to make traps. That was okay. I did like that. The Windlord, if you love AoE, is a good AoE fight. But overall, I wasn't as impressed. And then Terrace came out, and I love it. Absolutely love Terrace. Protectors, you can do an elite mode. You can do a heroic mode. You can do a normal mode. You can do a heroic elite mode. There's 4 different modes for one boss. For one boss. And it just matters of how you kill him. It's almost Alduar-esque how you do things. And it's really, really a good thing. Then you have Sulong, where the healers get to shine, where the DPS gets to shine, where it's just a great overall fight. Lei Shi is a little bit sketchy. It's a little bit clunky of a feeling fight, but overall, that's still one of my favorite fights. You know, different abilities, random abilities, so you always have to be on your toes. It's not, okay, he did this, he did this, he did this, okay. You know, it's just a good overall fight. And then Shaw, a great endurance fight for the end of a tier. I got to give Terrace an 8.5. Okay, maybe, yeah, about an 8.5. So, overall, guys, you're going to have a good time in this raid tier. I wanted to get this video out to let people know that if you stopped raiding, or that if you just haven't had time to raid, go do some LFRs, because even then you'll get to see the fights. If you can get into normal raiding, please go do it, because you're really going to enjoy yourself. If you just sit back and say, you know what, let's just look at this. You know, when you sit back and you go, okay, what's coming up in this fight? With talent systems, it's, oh, well, I need this for this fight, and I need this talent and this glyph and this and this. And that's the other thing that's made it really, really good for raiding, guys, is it's been so much fun to mess with different talents and to see what different things will do. Like on my mage, having the greater invis for the heroic Elegon thing when I have to soak, it's just a cool thing to be able to do. It's an amazing thing when you can say, oh, well, I can actually account for this ability because I have this talent, or I have this talent. It brings a whole nother aspect into your raiding mentality. And like in between pulls on progression, oh, well, you know, I realize that I'm not doing this or doing this, so I could probably get away with using this here because I think it'll be a little bit better for my overall healing, DPS, tanking, whatever. It's just a really good synergy between everything. I really hope they continue it. And guys, go in there, raid, go have fun. It's a really, really good tier. You're going to absolutely enjoy it. I promise you. And like I said, in the comments below, I'd love to see what your thoughts are on what your favorite instance, what your favorite raid was between MV, Hoff, and Terrace. Who's your favorite boss? Who's your least favorite boss? Like I said, my least favorite boss is probably Blade Lord Tyak. My favorite boss has got to be Elegon. I thought Elegon was amazing. And just, I want to see what you guys rate the overall tier. I want to see what you guys think about as your favorite boss, your least favorite boss. Any thoughts on any improvements that Blizzard could have made? Anything that you're excited for coming up? And I wanted to again say thank you to everybody who has subscribed and who has helped me get these videos. The videos will be coming out. Obviously, the boss kill videos not as fast as they were, as now it's into heroic mode, so it does get a little bit sketchy. Um, but I do want to thank you guys for everything so far, and I want to try to make some more of these videos for you. But keep in mind that if you haven't been raiding, guys, I just can't tell you enough. You're going to love Tier 14. It's such a good time. We'll see you in the next one.